This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. As I was falling asleep, I had these thoughts coming into my mind, as they do always before I go to bed, and I'm like shifting into probably a theta brainwave. And I always come like, okay, hold on to that for tomorrow when I can record or I can write. And what came up last night was I was thinking about how I've always worked with women. And when I began doing this work as a coach, and when I was running the center that my ex husband and I had co founded, Evolve Wellness Center, I was running workshops and talks and courses. But one of the first things I began was doing women's circles. And the reason why I did women's circles was because I wanted to heal my own relationship with women and the feminine. I'd always had girlfriends throughout my life, but it was always kind of like one, um, never a group, but kind of one. And it lasted for a certain phase. And then either I moved somewhere, they moved, and then just over time and just not having proximity, it kind of fades away. And I was really wanting to call in like my girlfriends, my soul sisters. And I wanted to heal this wound that I had from when I was a ballet student, a ballet dancer, but especially as a ballet student, because unfortunately, our society and that world especially breeds a lot of competition. And I'm not a competitive person. And at that age, especially, I was so just in the joy of the expression of my joy. And I had talent as a dancer. And so it was not ever my fault, like what role I was given, or that I had talent. Like that was just my God given whatever, as we all have our own. But, I either lost friends, girlfriends, or I felt their jealousy and a little bit the stabbing, you could say. And it was so painful. So I came to do women's circles because I wanted to heal that aspect. And actually from that moment forward, I really started to call in and bring in what are now my soul sisters that I've had for the last 10, 15 years that I just so love and adore and feel so grateful for. But that is just to preface what I was thinking about last night, that, so this was in my late 20s, early 30s, I was doing this work. And then, I had a child and I moved into the countryside, and that kind of, I retreated a little bit, I think, from doing my work and in some ways my purpose. I guess I was moving into my purpose as a mother. But last night I was thinking like, oh, I really miss doing that work. And I got a message from a friend just reflecting things back about me and saying, oh, you really could help out so many women. And I was thinking about how I've been through so many different phases of being a woman throughout my life. And actually, it was when I was coming to the end of my marriage that I wrote actually a poem. And I used to do these mini spontaneous creative projects where like a poem would just come through my mind very quickly. I'd write it down on the page super fast, no editing, just one jot down, find a piece of music, put improvised movement to it. The only editing I did was to put that in, have black and white filter, and I would play with fast and slow motion of movement, but no other editing whatsoever. It was a very fast, spontaneous expression. And I called them poetry in motion. I have a YouTube video. I have a YouTube channel. I haven't put stuff up there in so long, but you can get an idea of what I used to do. And one of my poems was the many women within a woman. The many, not just archetypes, like, of course I work around that, the archetypes that we move through every month in our cycle and throughout our lives, the maiden, the mother, the enchantress, the wise woman, but also just the various women within us, the various aspects, the part of me that's deep and wise, the part of me that's silly, the part of me that's sensual, the part of me that's, like wild and feral, and the part of me that's like very grounded and still and, so many different expressions of myself being a woman. I was thinking about how like, oh, I really miss doing that work. And I'm kind of sad that it never really took off. And, because of this kind of segue into a very different part of my life. And I've always had a very strong sense of self and who I am as a woman. But of course, over time and as you get older, it's, I mean, I don't drink wine anymore, but it's like a fine wine that matures more beautifully with age, right? And so I'm in my 40s now, and there are times where I think, God, I wish I could have been doing this work in my 30s, and had I begun before, like the caught the wave before everybody else did, then I would be at a different place in my career. But then I was thinking, but I wouldn't be able to speak to the degree that I can now of being a woman, because what is it like to be a woman in your 40s? I have been many, many different women, many women that I couldn't have been when I was in my 20s or in my 30s, just simply because of time and experience. So if I reflect back on my life, I've been the woman that followed her dream, and as a professional ballet in San Francisco, with San Francisco Ballet, that experience. But I was also the woman that got injured and got mononucleosis and kept on facing obstacles and challenges and was taken away from my passion. And before that, felt like my passion was being molded into something else that was no longer mine, that I was just the puppet, the pawn on somebody else's chessboard. So I've been through the woman that lost her dreams. I've been through the woman that went through different relationships and how they spiritually grew me and how they strengthened me as a woman. Like when I was in a 9-month relationship with a narcissist when I was 22 years old. And how my therapist after said, wow, you have such a strong sense of self to be able to pull yourself out of that so quickly. I've had renditions of following my dream and feeling like it was retracted. I've moved countries and continents and cities, and I've become a mother, and the woman that I became as a mother, and I got married, and the woman that I became as a wife, and the woman that I became as a wife that felt so lonely because my husband was away all the time working, or wasn't emotionally available, or that I couldn't love to the degree that I wanted to love and be loved because the depth wasn't there for me. And there was many other wonderful things, but these were the things that it's like I felt the pain of being a married woman that wasn't happy. I felt the isolation of having a child and essentially feeling like I was completely on my own without the village, and the isolation and the loneliness that you can feel with that, alongside the incredible feelings of unconditional love that you have for your child, and the loss of the maiden, but the gaining of the mother, and the this whole new world that opens up being a mother, but also being pulled out of society and not valued by society. I've been all those women. I've been the woman that got divorced. I've been the woman that's been on my own as a single mother and moving countries and fucking doing it all on my own. And the woman that has gone into the depths and deepest places within myself and pulled out the thorn of my wounding. I've been all those women and so many more. Also in those times, great moments of joy and bliss and fun and sensuality and discovery and a little bit of everything. And so sometimes, our society wants us to do so much when we're young. Like we should have all our shit together when we're in our 20s and be famous and make lots of money and have the house and have the husband and the wife and the kids and this and and 1 million followers. And it's like, oh God, life hasn't even begun in your 20s, like 20s are just you're exploring, you're figuring out who the fuck am I, and what is this thing? And you have the energy to go out and explore and travel and discover. And that's great, but you don't need to have your shit together. I'm in my 40s. I don't have my shit together. What does that even mean? What does it mean? In a society that is sick, what does normalcy mean? It means nothing. It means indoctrination. It means giving up your sovereignty and your authenticity and just staying in line and staying within the box. And that's so boring and uninteresting, especially to the soul that is in the constant pursuit of growth. That's what makes being human interesting to the soul, is it's a growth experience, right? So I found myself last night lying in bed and really feeling again that, that impulse. And especially after my friend was sharing with me of like, oh, you could really help a lot of women, that I want to be of service in that way to both men and women. But I think, of course, as a woman, I feel like I can serve women better, you know? Um, and I was thinking how I really want that to come into my life a lot more, you know, and the embodiment of being a woman and the humanity of being a woman, because we are cyclical and we are emotional beings and we are intuitive and we have a lot of history of trauma of being suppressed for our emotionality and our intuition and the magic that we carry and the portals that we are, the gateway that we are. I mean, I truly believe that women do invite men to drop into their heart. And by way of dropping into heart and creating true union, heart to heart, they also then become the portal that opens up to receiving God, to receiving the divine through that mutual reciprocal being of service to each other, through the intimacy that we have through a vulnerable, open, loving heart, through sexual union, that a woman opens up and becomes the portal, the receptor that takes the man into her embodiment, and then through her heart and through into her upper mind and into the connection to source divine, both are taken into another dimension and into another realm. And you know, one of the things that many women are going through right now, including myself, is that there's a lot of women that are single because I think we're wanting to move into this more, sorry, I just wanted to make sure that my mic was working, into a more spiritual form of union and relationship. And by spiritual, I'm not saying it's woke. I'm not a believer of woke, not woo woo. It's not dogmatic. It's not religious. And it is deeply rooted and connected to the source of all that is consciousness, whatever you want to call it, you know, the quantum, the field, love. You know, I think as these times are bringing us into remembrance and into the refinement of who we are, it's shedding all the layers and the skins of the superficiality that we've been in, the disconnect and discord that we've been in because of the disconnect. But as I spoke about, I think last week, that we go through the portal to the divine by way of being in our humanity. And the way that we be in our humanity is we don't judge it. We don't judge it. And women have been judged. You're judged left, right, and center. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. You know, when I was writing this book that I never published, it was like, well, you're meant to be sexy and young and, you know, beautiful and all of these things, but don't be a slut. Don't be a hoe. Don't be this. It's like, what do you want from us, society? You know, be smart, but don't be too outspoken because then you're going to be a bitch. You know, it's just the amount of double standards is revolting, to be honest. It really is. And so the heroine's journey is to not, like, the hero's journey is to leave the kind of the kingdom, the tribe, and go out in the world and, you know, go through all these feats and find his courage and his bravery and slay the dragon or whatever. I don't want to, I think I respect dragons, but like slay evil, right? And then come back a man, basically, back to the kingdom and the tribe, and then be of service to the kingdom and the tribe. A woman needs to go out in the world, but not to conquer the outer world, but to conquer and release all of the opinions of who she should be according to society, according to the kingdom, according to the tribe. And she goes and discovers who she truly is without the opinions of others, you know, without the molds and masks of how she should be formed and how she should be painted and pictured. And she gets to be unabashedly, authentically her. And you know what I love about coming into the enchantress phase of my life is you give no fucks. It's fucking fantastic. It is. like, do I miss the maiden where, I would wake up and my face was awake, and, I could go out, and there's a youthfulness, and there's an energy, and there's a magnetism. Yeah, but the wisdom that has come, especially through the arc of the mother phase, and I want to be very clear that the mother phase doesn't mean you have to become a biological mother. It's just when we learn to birth not only children, but our creativity, our we come into the nourishment of who we are, and how we can give and be the archetypal mother, but most especially for ourselves, because, like, the analogy I always use, the oxygen masks fall, the cabin pressure, has gone down. You put your mask on first. You can't help anybody else if you haven't done that. And so the mother phase is also learning, how do we nourish ourselves and then be of service to others and be beautifully selfless in that way. But it has to come by way of being self-generous, because otherwise you burn out. But the enchantress, like, yeah, I'm getting to the other side. I don't have the same kind of, it's so interesting, when you get in your 40s and you look at, like, how men look at women in their 20s, and it's like, yeah, so how men look at women in their 20s. Did I say that? I'm having these weird moments where I'm like, something is happening in time. Because there's just this youthful beauty, right? Not yet quite the wisdom or the grounding or the embodiment, but this just kind of innocent loveliness, right? And in your 40s, you don't get looked at like that anymore. I remember there's this comedian, I think she's an American comedian. I don't remember her name. She's blonde. And she was talking about how, in her 20s, like, when the construct, this was in America, the construction workers, used to, probably don't do it nowadays because of, like, hashtag me too, but how they used to, like, whistle at you, and in your 20s you're like, oh God, just, like, stop, so annoying. And then in her 30s, she's like walking by, like, come on, like, look at me, like, she's sticking her butt out or whatever, and, like, not getting anything and being like, oh man. And it's just funny. And it's not that it should be about that, right? We shouldn't be going out to be seen. But there is something, I think, about the feminine, not in society's way, but in the purest form of the feminine. The feminine is to be revered. The feminine is beautiful. I remember when I watched Seinfeld, I used to love that show when I was younger, that Elaine was talking to Jerry Seinfeld, and she was saying, they were talking about walking around the apartment naked, and he was walking around the apartment naked, and she's immediately like, no, 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 no. That's not a good look. That's not a good look on a man. A man is, like, utilitarian, but a woman is a piece of art. And, it's not, I think men's bodies can be beautiful, but it's like the feminine is really a work of art. The curvature, the unique nature of her body, no matter what shape or form she is, there is something about the feminine that in the essence wants to be revered. Whereas I think the masculine wants to be respected. Not that the feminine also doesn't want to be respected. And also, this isn't gender specific. This is the feminine within us and the masculine within us. But I do think that, if I break it down to man and woman, there is something around that when a woman feels adored by her man, there's a reverence there. It becomes so mutual, because of course she will revere her man in the feminine expression of revering a man, but I think I can speak for myself that there's, like, a deep connection and respect. Like, for me, I find that if I don't respect a man, it doesn't work, whereas I think if a man isn't really in reverence of his woman, it doesn't work, because actually both will come back into reverence and respect and many other things. But there's something about, there's, like, a certain pathway that is specific to a woman and a certain pathway that's specific to the man. And I'm just speaking from my opinion. You can have your own and your own pathway, right? But there's normally a pathway that's unique in the way that we see it and feel it. So going back, though, to becoming the enchantress, the not giving a fuck. And I don't mean that, like, in an apathetic, like, oh, I'm just going to let myself go kind of way, but you love yourself on a totally different level. And you don't, I'm not saying that I did it for others when I was younger, but you most certainly don't do it for others when you're in your 40s. You know, it's really, there's a freedom in not caring. There's a freedom in knowing who you are. There's a freedom in accepting who you are, all of who you are. And so this is really my thing, is you cannot reach your divinity and you cannot reach true liberation until you have accepted all parts of your humanity, all parts. So that means when you get fiery, if you get fiery, you love and accept that part. You also take self responsibility for it, but you love and accept that part and you give her the permission. You give the feral, wild, feisty woman permission to be her, to be expressive, right? Fuck this patriarchal, like cross your legs and being tight and say, please. Polite is how that should have come out, but my words aren't finding clarity these days. Tripping over my own tongue. And all the other aspects of a woman. This is what I'm saying. Being in my 40s, I can look back and go, God, I've been so many women. And I don't mean that in this like schizophrenic, like bipolar way. I mean, like, wow, I'm a multifaceted woman. And that is what a woman is. She is multifaceted, multi-textured, multi-layered. She can be like the weather that changes. She's cyclical. She's not linear. She's not stagnant. And we've lived in a world that's like, you need to be linear and stagnant and unchanging and, forward growth, moving economic growth. We're humans. We're not a fucking graph. We're not a chart. We're not a stock. And actually stocks are all over the fucking places, apparently. So we need to honor and respect the cycle of the feminine again. And I certainly have found my freedom, my liberation, my peace has come by accepting all parts of me. And I was in a marriage with someone that didn't understand the feminine. So, my feminine was too wild, too angry. Well, why do you think I'm fucking angry? Been through the woman that was like, my heart felt alone. I was sexually frustrated, a very strong libido. It's like, and that's okay. That's okay for a woman to feel like that. It's also okay for a woman to be like, I'm so disinterested, whatever's our authentic expression, but that we get to have a voice. I remember in my 20s, I had mononucleosis when I was 18 years old. And from that point forward, for a long time, I had issues with my glands. I always felt like they were swollen. And I knew, oh, this is fifth chakra stuff. This was me like, I need to find my voice. And it's probably I've been stoned or burnt to death in past lives for having a voice. And there are times even now when I share, it's less now, but even over these years when I share on social media, that there's still that little bit of that filter, that inhibitor that goes, ooh, can you say that, Corinne? But in my morning meditation, being with, as I like to call it, I go through the 7 chakras and I kind of have an I am statement for each one of them. And for the 5th chakra is I'm a speaker of truth, and I speak my truth boldly and humbly and authentically without fear and inhibition. And I think we have to get to this point in a culture that is this cancel culture, this political fuckery of you need to believe this or believe that or be on the right or be on the left, or you're awake, you're asleep, you're a sheep. Both sides are saying the same thing of the other. It's so absurd, where you feel like you can't have an opinion and you can't speak your truth because you're going to be judged or you're going to be condemned or you're going to be shamed or you're going to be persecuted or you're going to be like have mean fucking words thrown your way. You learn, you sometimes choose to be quiet. But especially as women, but both men and women right now, and I would go so far as to say the feminine in us all wants to get out of the throat, into the voice, out into the ether. And then it goes beyond the voice, it goes into just pure embodiment. I love somebody that follows me on my YouTube. What did he say? You come across like you're unfuckwithable. And I'm like, thank you. I love that. That's a great comment. And I'm deeply sensitive. and I'm vulnerable and I'm human and I'm messy and even if there's a part that is fucking strong and knows herself very well and knows how to take care of myself very well, I'm still human like the rest of us. So imperfect. And I feel, and sometimes things scare me, and I'm like, ouch, I don't want to put myself out there because I don't want to deal with the ouchness of it, you know? And I've also learned by sharing and expressing myself online that a lot of the times it's not personal, you know? There's so much projection going on. There's so much of our collective and individual shadow that if we haven't processed it, it will be projected. And it's like this woman said to me when I was 16 and she did a palm reading for me. She's like, if you're going to be in the limelight, if you're going to be in the limelight, you have to be okay with having rotten tomatoes thrown in your face. So it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to be authentic, vulnerable, transparent, outspoken, to be a woman. Also takes a lot of courage to be a man. I know so many men that feel so mind fucked by the way that the masculine has been toxified. It's been put in that category. You know, this friend that I was speaking about is like, I hate that there has to be this interlinking of those two words. Why do they have to be connected? That's what goes together now, you know? This remembrance is also a reclaiming of who we truly are as the feminine and as the masculine, but as men and women. As men and women, and I am going to use those two terms. I am. Because that's what we're born into. Feminine and masculine are energies. Man and woman is biology. And so claiming back the roles that are natural and innate to us and throwing away the patriarchal definitions, the feminist definitions. You get to be strong and you get to be soft. You get to be brave and courageous, and you get to be delicate and fragile like a petal of a rose. You get to be everything that you are. And I would love to see our society, our tribe, our collective as a humanity really come to the point of you get to be you, and I celebrate that. I celebrate that with you. We get to let our metaphoric bellies out and just be who we fucking are in all of our humanity, in all of that messiness. But that's where we reach divinity. I'm going to say it again and again and again and again. Maybe other people have found other routes to get there, but this is just my route that I've learned. And I can only share and impart what I've walked through because I believe in walking my talk. I don't believe in fucking reading a textbook and then sharing some like, you know, shit that I don't even haven't experienced myself. Right. And there's 8 billion of us on here on this planet. So some will resonate and some won't. And you'll find someone else to resonate with. If you don't resonate with me, that's fine. We don't need to be liked by everyone. But we need to like ourselves. And I say that in the most self-loving, self-generous, humbled, and yet owning who we are, because we're not of service. If we're so humble that it's like, oh yeah, oh thank you, oh I'm beautiful, oh you think I'm oh thank you. You know, I've done that. I did that in my 20s. I think at times I was too fucking humble, you know? So what is the balance between I own and claim who I am in my magnificence, and yet I will always be a humble soul. I was going to say human soul, and a divine servant to Source God and to my fellow humankind. So, you know, sitting here reflecting on how do I want to support women? I want to support you if you're a woman to just be who you are and don't, you know, I work with so many women that are dating and they're constantly thinking, does the guy like me? Does he want me? Is he going to reject me? Am I not pretty enough? Am I not sexy enough? And am I not young enough? Am I not this enough? Am I not thin enough? Am I not something enough Fuck what he thinks about you. And I want you to think about what you want. Do you choose him? And firstly, are you choosing yourself? So for women specifically, we have to go through the heroine's journey of stripping back all of the opinions and expectations of who we ought to be. And instead, just be who we are and trust that there is a man out there that will love you for that. And if a man can't love you for that, he's not your man. Period. And vice versa, it goes the other way for men too. Be you. Be authentically you. Don't be ashamed of your masculinity. Also strip away who you should and shouldn't be in society. Fuck society's definition of everything. Honestly, it's not in service to humanity. It's in service to the people that run society and are trying to control humanity. So this is a liberation. This is an emancipation, right? And this is a proclamation that says, like, I am reclaiming my soul, and I'm reclaiming the divinity of my humanity and the beauty of my humanity. And I will embrace and hold and accept and bring into love and into alchemy all parts of myself. That's the only thing that sets you free, in my humble opinion. We have to come through the lens of acceptance of all parts. No neglect, no rejection, no compartmentalization, no ifs, buts, ands, asterisks. All of you. Even when you're like, man, in that episode, I seem like a batshit crazy lady. Love her too. She deserves to be expressed as well. She deserves to be loved. She deserves to be seen, understood, heard, held. You want a man to do that for you, you have to know how to receive that from yourself. Otherwise, you won't fully receive it from him, and vice versa, for a man receiving from a woman. And what I'm learning and remembering is, like, last week I talked about God, when you don't believe, and how, like, to prove himself, and he fucking proved himself, right? And I'm not religious, but I'm learning to have epic faith and really believe. And it's funny that I've never used the word God really, but I'm using it now almost because I feel like we're going through such a time of healing and redefining that all that was pure, that was inverted and made to be something that it's not, and God being one of those, is just a word, right? It's just a word that symbolizes something. Whether that's the quantum field, whether that's consciousness, whether that's love, whether that's spirit, whether that's universe, it's just a label, right? But words are also powerful. And I think we're cleansing and detoxing certain words. And so it's funny that I'm finding myself wanting to use the word God, which I've never done in my life. Like I steered away from it because of the religious connotation. But I'm like, no, we need to heal this word. We need to infuse it with love and the purity and the integrity that actually it originally came from. Because when we're disconnected from source, from God, we feel alone because we are God. We are source. So we're disconnected from ourselves. And if you're away from your own home, you will feel lonely. You will feel abandoned. You will feel like a refugee in your own being, right? So we're coming back home. And so for me, it's just interesting to use this word God again, and I'm learning, it's like, okay, Corinne, you got to believe, even when it's hard, even when it's really hard and you're like, why am I in this? That just because it's hard doesn't mean that God has abandoned me. That's my own personal, like, what I'm working with right now. You'll have your own version. And sometimes I look at people that have like epic fucking faith in God. I'm like, man, I envy them a little bit. They seem like really happy. And I'm fine with it as long as it doesn't get into this dogmatic, judgmental, segregating. Sorry, my shirt's falling down. Anything that comes through with judgment isn't God anyway. It's not love. It's not based in love. It's not based in unconditional, compassionate love. So whatever you want to call it, anything that comes through the lens of judgment is not divine, period. Anything that segregates, anything that says these people deserve to die and these people deserve to live is not coming from God, because it's not coming from love. So therefore, it is not pure. I hope somehow this stream of consciousness has made sense. But the moral of the story for today is I want to support you in embracing and in believing in yourself first and foremost, so that you can see the divinity of who you are. But first, you got to love the messiness of who you are as a human. I know that it's totally okay. Welcome. Welcome to being human. Welcome to the show. It gets dramatic sometimes, but also like beautiful. And don't we all just want to feel peace, feel happiness, feel joy, feel at home? So how about we how about we do that for ourselves, for one another as a collective, and for us as a species and a humanity that is an expression of God, source, consciousness, all that is love itself. So I'm going to leave you with that. Some things to ponder, pontificate upon. And as always, take it or leave it as feels right for you, and loving you from afar. Bye. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.